Good morning, dear student, and welcome again to a module produced by Netaji Subhas Mahavidyalaya, Haldibaড়ি, Coachbihar. Dear student, in the previous lecture on Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, I mainly concentrated on Jane Austen as a writer and on his works, especially the very important 6 novels that he published, that he composed. And though very unfortunately these very famous novels were initially rejected to be published by the publishing house. Now I will talk about the theme of Pride and Prejudice. Dear students, Pride and Prejudice deals with the gradual union of Darcy and Elizabeth. Gradual union. Actually, Darcy and Elizabeth did not fall in love at first sight. Shortly after, they began to diverge because of their pride and prejudice, quote unquote pride and quote unquote prejudice. But in course of time, Darcy's pride demolishes and Elizabeth's prejudice turns into a reasoned attitude, and finally they are best suited to each other for a marital relationship. At the Meryton ball, when Bingley suggests that Darcy should dance with Elizabeth, he makes the insulting remark that she is tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt him. Remember, dear boys and girls, the sentence that was used by Darcy regarding Elizabeth, that she is tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt him. Elizabeth overhears Darcy's remark and feels somewhat slighted, feels somewhat upset. She becomes prejudiced against him, which is again strengthened by the lies told by George Wickham about Darcy. Wickham says that Darcy has deprived him of his father's promised career of a clergyman to Wickham. Further, Colonel Fitzwilliam reveals to her that Darcy is responsible for dissuading Bingley from marrying Jane. Elizabeth is agitated over this revelation, and hates Darcy as never before for meddling into the affair of Jane and Bingley. Though Elizabeth is prejudiced against Darcy, he begins to feel affection for her silently. He is attracted by the beautiful expression of her dark eyes. When Elizabeth was staying with Collins, says Darcy made his first proposal to her. Elizabeth turns down his proposal, accusing him of dissuading Mr. Wickham. In order to defend himself, he writes a letter to her. Regarding Jane and Bingley, Darcy admits that he persuades Bingley to give up Jane, for he had the impression that Jane did not really love Bingley. As for Wickham, Darcy states that after the death of Darcy's father, Wickham wished to take up law and give up his claim to a crunch living by accepting in lieu of it £3,000 to use to study law. Darcy gave him £3,000, but Wickham misspent the money or squandered away the money, siphoned off the money, and tried to get more from Darcy. And when that failed, he tried to elope with Darcy's sister, which was foiled by Darcy. Now, learning the truth about Wickham and Darcy's frank confession that he had dissuaded Mr. Bingley from marrying Jane, the antipathy towards Darcy started drifting away. Wickham's death, Wickham, who said a lot of lies regarding Darcy in order to malign his reputation. After all these incidents took place, when Darcy proposes to Elizabeth for the second time, he says that what he has done in the settling of the affairs between Lydia and Wickham has done for the sake of Elizabeth. Darcy confesses that he did all these things out of his deep love for Elizabeth. He wishes to know if she has changed her mind after her first refusal. Elizabeth responds that her feelings have greatly changed and that she also loves Darcy. Darcy admits to Elizabeth that her refusal of his first proposal caused him to examine his pride while making his first proposal of marriage to Elizabeth, he was sure that she would accept it most readily and promptly. But she had humbled him by rejecting his proposal and made him realize that he was not worthy of her as long as he remained a proud and conceited man. Thus Elizabeth had taught Darcy a lesson by refusing his proposal, which helps him to get free from his pride. As for Elizabeth, she overcomes her prejudice gradually, for Darcy's real affection for her. Thus, though the novel begins with Darcy and Elizabeth's pride and prejudice against each other, it comes to a happy end when they conquer their pride and prejudice. At the end of the novel, the two very important characters, Darcy and Elizabeth, are quote unquote cured of their own pride and prejudice. Thank you, good boys. Enjoy reading and stay at home. Stay healthy. Thank you.